In this video, I will show the fastest and most frictionless way to practice SQL. So if you use embedded serverless SQLite, then you can just grab your computer and start writing SQL to create data, delete, update, read data, and so on. And you don't need to install anything or use any websites or any online SQL sandboxes. So in this video today, these are all the things that we will do with you using Embedded SQLite in my MacBook or in your MacBook. By the way, I also recommend to code along. Now, if you have Windows, then you also have SQLite embedded in it, but with Windows, there isn't an easy way to access it, at least not as easy as on a MacBook. So, and on a MacBook, it's done like this. So just bring up the terminal by pressing Command space, terminal, and then typing SQLite 3. And that's it. We are connected to a transient in-memory database. I will explain what this is in just a second, but first there's one thing that I need to mention in case you don't know. In this video, I'm actually explaining what happened in my earlier video where I told a story. Watching that story is optional if you just want to know the answers, but if you do enjoy stories, then now is the spoiler alert. Go and watch that video and then come back here and have it all explained. So in the story, an intern tries to avoid being tested on his SQL skills because he put SQL in his CV, but in reality he doesn't know it. And he's trying to wiggle out of it, claiming that it would take too long to set everything up. But a data engineer, who is the second character in the story, insists that no setting up is needed. So they launch SQLite just like I did now, and then they write SQL code and they do everything that is on this list that I showed earlier. And the first one we already did, so we can check it off. And I promised to explain what is this transient in-memory database. Let's do it now. So here's the official definition. If you like to read it, you can pause and read. But basically, when I typed SQLite 3 here, I started a session. And this is how you know that you have a session going on when you see this so-called prompt. And when this session started, SQLite created this database in my RAM, random access memory, and not on the disk. A disk would store data permanently, but RAM does not. So once I close this session, all data disappears. And to close the session, I would do this. I would type .exit, and like that. Now, session's closed, data is gone. Now to open another session and to create a new database, again, SQLite 3 and enter, and we have a new database created for us. There is a way to save the data, don't worry about it, but that's for another video. And for now, let's continue on to the second item, creating a table, because now we have the database created, but the database is empty and waiting for me to create some tables for it. And this is how I create a table. Create table test name varchar. This is the same table that intern creates in the story video. Here we don't see anything because we haven't asked the database engine to show us anything. We just asked it to create the table. But I have visualized for you so that you can imagine what it's like. And it looks like that. So the name of the table is test, just like we specified here. It has a column, and the name of the column is name, just like we specified here. and the table is completely empty. So technically this is not correct. This is one row which is empty, so really I need to get rid of this row. In reality, right now in the database, we have something like this. I just didn't want to start like this because this doesn't even look like a table, it looks like a box. Now, this word, varchar, is short for variable character. That basically means that the data that we will put in this column under name will be of type variable character, or in other words, text of different length. And this, one thing left to explain, create table, is the command itself asking to create a table. Now, my advice is not to learn these commands and everything by heart, but to wait until the moment you need it and then to ask ChatGPT or another AI to remind the exact syntax and to explain how it works. That way you can learn at the same time as you apply it. So for example, how would I do it? I would just bring up some kind of AI, and this is free version of ChatGPT, and I'm not even logged in, and I just ask, for example, a syntax for creating a table in SQL. And it tells you all of that and more. So having in mind that you can do this by yourself, in these videos I just want to show how everything works in general and how does it look like when a real human being uses SQL. So let's tick this off and let's continue. And further in the story, intern adds some data to the table, his own name actually. He does it by executing this statement. Insert into test values J, and J is his name. Values. Sorry. Again, we see no response from SQLite when everything is okay. When it's not, then it helps you. But now our table has one row like this with J's name in it. And we can put another check here. Next, we're going to read some data. And until now, you may have noticed that we asked SQLite to create a table, then we inserted some data, but we didn't see the result right here. I only showed you what was going on here in this note-taking app. So how can you be sure? And what data people do a lot is that they read the data from the database to check the results of their changes. And this is how it's done. You write a select statement like this. For example, select all from test. Now, in the story, Jay makes a lot of mistakes when writing this query. He writes select all, then select star. And when the database engineer sees this happening, she realizes that this intern really doesn't know SQL at all. This is such a basic SQL statement that if you know at least a little bit of SQL, then you know this. So let's press enter to execute, and we get the data. So this is the data without the name of the column or the name of the table, just the data. But now we can check this. So then, having noticed how little Jay knows about SQL despite having put it in his CV, the data engineer decides to troll him and gets him to add a second column to the table with the assessment of SQL, his SQL skills. So she wants the end result to look like this, like that, and 0 SQL skills. So basically this is now turning into a table of tests and assessments, and the message is that J has 0 SQL skills. In order to achieve that, we need to do two things. So to run two SQL statements, one to add the column itself, and the second one to add the data. To add the column, we do this. outer table test and assessment varchar. Here you already recognize this, which is the data type variable character. Then this assessment is the name of the column that we are adding. This is the name of the table. And what remains outer table and add is the command telling what to do. I press enter. I get no output, of course, and our table in the database now looks like this. So we do have the column, we just don't have the data yet in it. Next statement is to add that data. So update test set assessment equals that. There you go. No output means success, and this data lands right here. Now in the terminal we have no output, so in order to confirm what happened we need that select statement again. And here the data engineer teaches Jay a very convenient trick that pressing key up on the keyboard brings up earlier commands like this. And we cycle through our earlier commands. So intern finds this select statement and executes, and here is the result. And at this point Jay realizes that the data engineer is not happy. And the data engineer trolls him further by dictating this SQL statement. Delete from test. This removes all rows from the table test like that, effectively removing Jay from the database and hinting that he may be kicked out of his internship just like that. At this point, Jay apologizes and promises to learn SQL. Now, here's the good news for the intern and for you as well. While SQL can be hard to learn, but only if you need to use it to its full capacity, which is rarely the case, and especially for data analysts. So the data analysts only need a small subset of SQL to perform queries, to read the data. Almost everything we did today here, by the way, we can check off everything now. So almost everything we did is actually not needed for the data analysts because they don't create tables and they don't manage data, not really. And from everything we did, data analysts typically only need to read. So from all of these statements, this is the one that the data analyst will be using frequently in their job, and even in this very simplest form the way we did here. Let's check where we are. I execute, the output is empty. In this case it means there is no data to show. So the data engineer knows that it is possible to learn SQL quickly, and she decides on another test to see how Jay learns. She gives him a challenge to add the data about himself back to this table. Now, to make the challenge harder, she asks him to clear all of this so he wouldn't see what he did previously. This is done with the command system clear. Now, this is not SQL, and that's why you have the dot in the beginning and you have no colon in the end. So here we always had a colon, but this is not SQL, so no colon. And what this does is to clear the screen. Jay, feeling under pressure, tries to remember the commands he did earlier. He fails a few times until he eventually remembers that he can use key up to see that history of commands. He uses that to find the correct SQL statement, which is this insert statement. Now, it doesn't work yet because now our table has two columns. So when we try to insert one value, then the database engine doesn't know where to insert it, into this column or into that column. And this is exactly what it complains about. So with a bit of trial and error, Jay corrects it to look like this. And when he runs it and he sees no output, then he knows that it was a success. Like a proper data person, he now finds the select all, runs it, and here's the output. And here Jay kind of trolls the data engineer back, implying that now he knows sufficient SQL. And the data engineer doesn't quite agree with that, but she admits that Jay is capable of learning. And after all, he got the result, which is what matters. So here you go. Now you know how to launch and use embedded serverless SQLite. And also, all of these items that we checked here, by the way, they cover the whole spectrum of SQL operations, so-called CRUD. Create, read, update, and delete. If you deal with SQL, you will see this term a lot. And now we have tried all of the components of this. With that story about J and this explainer video as well, I tried to show that it's easy to start coding in SQL and you don't need any preparation, especially if you have a MacBook. And the second side goal of mine was also to begin to demystify the terminal. In reality, data analysts rarely use the terminal, if at all, but my broader intent is to explain the fundamentals of tech and to show how things work behind the scenes. So there will be more stuff done with the terminal and you will see how easy it is. Thanks for watching and see you later.